Is this thing working? Looks like it is. What is happening, everybody? So what I wanted to do is I wanted to let a little bit of the hangover kind of subside a little bit with this GT500 embargo being released. And, you know, SEMA's already done. I think they're giving, you know, rides in a GT500 or something at SEMA. God only knows. I don't even know. I haven't really been paying attention to it, if I'm being perfectly honest. And it's really not because I haven't wanted to. It's really because I'm just not interested in it. It's, you know, it's not for lack of wanting to be interested. I'm just not. But I guess where I'm coming out with this, hey, Michael, what's up, man? I got the arm flex. I'll tell you what, man, we got our first really decent cold snap down here in Houston. It's freaking everybody out. But anyway, getting back to it, I don't want to get too far off topic here. So talking about the GT500, I want to let a few folks get in. I wanted to talk to you guys about this, kind of keep the conversation more or less focused on that GT500 because Scott's asking if it's cold. Yeah, it's South Houston, Texas cold. Anytime it, you know, you go try Ohio. Yeah, when I played football in college, we played Ohio State, and that was a real treat. Anyway, getting back to it, y'all. What's up with the GT500 anyway? So the embargo has been lifted, and we've seen some performance numbers, if you want to call them that, be released. And here's the thing. The reason why I'm asking, is this a Blockbuster or is this a Lackluster situation? Because right now we're looking at a car that's basically not impressing anybody that's driven it so far. Have you guys seen the reviews on this thing? If you haven't, it's worth a look. And look into, you know, non-traditional areas here. You've got guys like Engineering Explained and a few other YouTubers that have been out there to take a look at this car. Aside from the normal journo hacks that are out there that they'll throw behind the wheel of practically anything, and they'll give it a go and pretty much make an ass out of themselves in the process, or at least show a complete lack of skill set when it comes to automobile. Anyway, getting back to it, what I've noticed in a lot of these pieces, if you want to call it that, is that there's two things. One is there is always a direct line of sight comparison to the GT350. The people that have driven the GT500 at this point cannot seem to get GT350 name out their goddamn mouth, which is doing two things. One, it's unfair to the GT500 with how that car is being actually compared to that GT350. And two, it's not giving it any room for separation. And really, honorable mention, they're not mentioning the car in light of the cars that they need to be mentioning it in. Namely, the Red Eye, the ZL1, the Hellcat. That's not getting any pub. It's almost like the journalists have gotten behind the wheel of these cars and then have figured out of nowhere that they have no experience driving something like that. And the only thing that they can think of to compare it to is the GT350. All right, so let's start unpacking this a little bit. And I think you might pretty much understand where I'm coming from with this. Every single one of the journos that I have seen, or anybody that I have seen drive that car and come back with a review, all of the reviews are cookie cutter and they sound something like this. The GT500 is great in a straight line. It has a great noise, but it is not so much the driver's car, and it is not the track car that the GT350 is. Full stop. It basically can stop dead in its tracks at that point. And that is the absolute extent of any impression that they have to give. The second thing, and I may circle back around to that, I'm probably going to have to, but again, we're kind of unpacking this argument a little bit, and we're taking some of the big parts of it out first. The second chunk of this was turning these guys loose with this car on a drag strip, and they're trying to get a number out of the car. Now, Ford was sitting back hollering that this thing would run in the 10s. Now, granted, I think it's on Cup 2 tires or a lot of something like that, but it doesn't really matter. The way that the car was delivered from the factory, which that's another thing we're going to talk about in an upcoming video, which is horse shit. But anyway, These guys were doing good to get like 1120s, 1140s out of the car. I mean, it's obvious that these guys have never driven one of those types of cars in their life, or at least have never had any consistent training on how to wheel a motor vehicle around a closed circuit, a drag strip, or their backyard, or whatever you want to call it in terms of venue. They haven't, and so they basically already made Ford look bad in the process. The car was not as fast in quote unquote experienced hands the way that you would have expected it to be. And then they turn around and started to make excuses for it. Well, I'm not quite the driver that so-and-so is, and I'm not the... Let me tell you guys something. If a manufacturer comes out and says that a car will run a certain time, or they are targeting a certain time for a car, it better be the journalists that are out there able to get those numbers with the general public in tow, trying to match those numbers, not the other way around, which apparently is how it worked out. And I think Stang Mode went out. I think they had one in Bradenton that he dropped like a 10 something with the car. I can't remember what it was. One of the only people to drag a 10 out of the car, or at least published, that I'm aware of. And so again, we're talking about inexperienced, or at least non-car centric journalists that are out there taking these cars for a joyride, not realizing that they're in the process of more or less damning the car that they're driving while they're reporting on it. It's really funny. It's like the car was panned before it was even talked about, or at least in any real depth. So getting back to it, it's almost one of these situations where the GT350 is outshining the GT500 before the GT500 has been released. Bravo, journos. You've done already screwed anybody that has been thinking about the GT500. You basically shot that idea, I'm sure, out of a few folks, and have started to move them more towards the C8, which by all accounts is punching way above its weight class in terms of performance and putting power to the ground. So anyway, that's the opening monologue. Let me jump in here and say what's up to everybody that's checking in. So we've got Scott coming in. Yeah, Ohio. Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, trust me, I was there. It got cold. Hey, try Chicago last year in -7, and that's not including the wind too. That was a treat. Felix checking in and saying, we have a foot of snow outside in upstate New York. I would probably not be able to manage that at all. Donald Powers checking in. Hello, Mr. Mason. What's up, Donald Powers? Daycap's checking in. Damn it, that Challenger looks good on those rims, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Shawnee saying, good evening. Jury's out on the GT500 until I see some hard numbers. What do you need to see? I need to see that car on a drag pack, on a drag strip. And, you know, I'm not going to get into durability questions or anything like that. I think that's just going to be a test of time, and it's speculation at best. And granted, the speculation would keep me from buying a GT500. That's kind of the point of that discussion, as you look at it and take the driving experience completely out of the mix, which, by the way, we are going to circle back around and talk about that comparison between the GT500 and GT350. But you know, what do I need to see? I need to see that car on a drag strip. I need to see that car doing something Mustang related. I don't need to see that thing going around Willow. I don't really care what it does up against a ZL1 or a Corvette or a Red Eye or a Hellcat, whatever. Unless it's on a drag strip, I really just don't care. And if you're into roll racing, yeah, I'd like to see a timestamp for that car from 60 to 120 or 60 to 150. Those are the types of things that I want to see. Until then, I really can't offer up well, obviously I can't offer up an experienced opinion of the car. I mean, I haven't spent any time with it personally, but so far I have to rely on the people that have spent some time with that thing, and it's not looking good. And not only is it not looking too good, let's get back around and talk about that driving experience with that versus the GT350. What a lot of the journalists, and again, it's, you know, I'll just kind of touch on the topic again. For you guys just now coming in, the topic was the journalists keep swinging back to the GT350. They can't seem to keep that name out of their mouth when they talk about the GT500. And they keep coming back around saying, well, yeah, the GT500 is faster in a straight line, but the GT350 offers a much better balanced combination. It's more of a driver's car because it has an actual manual transmission as opposed to the flappy paddle / automatic thing that's going on. And because of that, they're saying that basically the GT350, regardless of the power difference, is actually the better car. They would prefer the car. They would take that car over the GT500, with the understanding that the GT500 isn't even offered for sale, so to speak, yet. In other words, yeah, you can order one, but I can't just walk over to my local Ford dealership and sit my fat ass into the seat of a GT500, cut a check, and drive off the lot. You can't do that. So basically, before it's even offered for local sale, the car is already being panned. And of course, they plant journalists behind the wheel of a car that basically most of these guys have no business driving in the first place, only to hear some English major come back with a bunch of SAT words about the car, and then only to offer up that they would rather have the GT350. Again, that's kind of the premise that I'm going with here, where the car had been left-handedly panned by the journalists coming into it. So anyway, let's see. Shawnee's asking, why would you expect a GT500 to be as good of a track car as a GT350? It's heavier. It's supposed to be a decent handling car that's quick and fast. Well, again, I mean, define track car. You know, that's the other side of this. If you want a good track car, look no further than Craigslist. Find yourself a C5 Corvette or a C6 Corvette or a Miata. Get out there and do some real tracking. I mean, the stuff that I keep hearing about with GT350s or GT500s being a better track car, this or that, is complete and utter horse shit. Because at least locally, you go to Motorsports Ranch, you just don't see those cars there. And it's not like they can't make it around a track. Make no mistake. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that nobody's going out and buying these cars. This better track car argument is fantasy. All right? I need Tattoo standing next to me to start talking about the fantasy bullshit that comes out of the mouths of these guys when they're talking about the GT350 is a better track car than the GT500, or the GT500 will embarrass a red eye on a closed circuit. And for that, I'm really confused by statements like that. These are fantasy statements. For one, it doesn't matter. Cars don't have emotions. You can't embarrass a car. It doesn't work like that. And I get, the bullshit, whatever. Okay, like that car killed this other car. Yeah, it's funny. They weren't allowed to make. Anyway, it's stupid hyperbole like that that really kind of irks me. And really, when we're talking about this, what we're really talking about is we're talking about a set of criteria that are not applicable to the street or to any type of racing that the average guy is going to buy this car to do. So I'm not really worried about how the car gets around a closed circuit. What I'm really more concerned about is, what does the car feel like to drive? What is the driving economics, the power to weight ratio, the power delivery versus RPM ratio? What do all of these things start to come together and make me feel when I'm driving this particular car? Is it better or worse than a Hellcat, which is extremely difficult to beat? These are the questions that I'm asking. So a track car, what people, I hear track car, the first thing I think of is a purpose-built circuit track appliance. It's a contraption that you put on a trailer to drag to an open course event. The same way I did with motorcycles when I would drag motorcycles to Thunder Hill in Northern California. I don't get the argument because, again, I've done this stuff, okay? I have lived this stuff. I've been seasons on a GSX-R 750 at Thunder Hill. I've been drag racing since I can't remember when I haven't been. Street racing since I can't remember not doing it, really. But not anymore. And that's the thing. These are guys that have never lived this lifestyle. These are guys that have never done any of this, using words and creating hype to other people that have never done any of this stuff before to just generate chatter. Beyond that, it means absolutely nothing. better track car to me is as embarrassing of a statement as it can possibly get, because it comes from such a place of pure and unfiltered ignorance that it just blows my mind. Anyway, let me sidestep that. Sam's checking in. Yo, B. Mason, I just read that the FCA is developing an inline-six estimated to run 520 horsepower. What are your thoughts on this? I hope they do it. It's a fantastic idea. I have heard about this before for the trucks. I don't know if it lost traction or just started fading off a little bit, but I have heard about the inline-six, and I am in love with that idea. It's another Mercedes, I think, conglomeration type thing. But that would be awesome, because I love me some inline-six turbo stuff. Felix checking in with Sean. Let's see, Daycab. Yep, riders not drivers. Also, DCT doesn't belong in anything heavy. Yeah, that was my original argument. And again, it's something that I really can't speak to yet, because durability is, again, going to have to be something that's time tested. But yeah, I don't like DCT. Oh, that reminds me, that's something else. Did you go back? Not now, keep watching this, but when you get a minute, go back and watch some of the videos of the GT500 launching. It's kind of interesting to watch that thing come out of the hole. It looks good, but it looks like it's really soft launching, and that's going to be something else that it's going to take a little bit of time for to see those cars get to the drag strip. We need to see how that thing's going to work, but just notice how soft that car comes out of the hole. Now, once it gets rolling, it's screaming like a banshee, but it just, I'm telling you, I don't think it's going to go as well as a lot of folks are hoping for that thing. Junkie's asking, how you liking this weather in Houston? Freaking love it, man. We don't get it too often, so I'm loving it. Fastman's checking in and said, hey, Brian, none of the journalists could get 965 out of the Demon stock, or anybody else for that matter. FCA and Ford both playing games. Oh, you want to hear my opinion on that deal? I have been overwhelmingly critical of FCA about that 965 that Leah Pritchett ran in the Demon. And yeah, the name is relevant here because it's a female driver that doesn't weigh anything. Myself and one of you guys could play catch with her in the backyard. She weighs nothing. Add to that the fact that when they were testing the car, I think the DA was like negative 2,000. They had mass traction out there prepping the track. And it's not like she went out there and ran a string of 965s. She ran out there and ran a 965. The rest of them were all like 970s and high 960s. So yeah, you want to talk about some bullshit numbers? That is, to this day, one of the absolute worst flubs and blunders. And it will show you that these people have no business talking about performance numbers when they don't know what they're talking about. And again, this type of ignorance is rampant, and I am so tired of seeing it. And it's really fallen on Mopar here lately. There's been so much just cringiness coming out of Mopar in the wake of the 965 scandal, or whatever you want to call it. Nobody's done it. I know that Ray was the only one that I know of that even got close with the 978, and that was last year at Legion of Demons. And yeah, I was crewing for him. So we got the car set up. I was checking pressures right up to that car hit the line. Car came out of the hole like a freaking scalded dog, and it did go 978 with the as factory equipped rear tires and the Demon skinnies. That car did cover that number, but wasn't nobody going 60s on that day. And yeah, there was a little bit of a headwind, but look, let me tell you something. In negative 1,800 foot DA, negative 1,700 foot DA, yeah, you're going to have a hard time actually getting past that 960 range, especially when you weigh as much as a grown-ass man, not some skinny female driver, small female driver. Himmy Head saying, nice nice double face. Yeah, we're doing No Shave November here. Let's see. Himmy Head checked in. Let's see. Robbie saying, I don't like the weather in Oklahoma. Nobody does. Junkie Chan saying, y'all got snow? I bet they do. Spaz is saying should have had a manual transmission option for the GT500. Yeah, they should have had a manual transmission for the GT500, but they also should have had an automatic, a true automatic for the GT500, so that the GT500 could go out and start cleaning house with the likes of Red Eyes or Hellcats or what have you, ZL1s, Z06s, whatever the case is. You can't say that you can't do it. The Vet's got an automatic. The Camaro's got an automatic. The Hellcat's got an automatic. Why can't you? Ford, I mean, it's too frustrating to have the conversation over and over and over again. And, this type of, technology for technology's sake, all the while basically alienating a buying segment for your car, or at least putting a lot of doubt in the minds of guys like me that could go out and possibly, try to swing away to get one of these cars. I'm not going to do it. One of the questions, by the way, that's been coming up a lot was, or has been, I should say, am I getting rid of the Hellcat to get a GT500? The answer to that is no, and I'm not getting rid of the Hellcat to get a GT500, not because I don't like the GT500 and not because I'm such a Mopar guy. It's because Ford didn't release the car with the transmission or the setup that I would have wanted at all whatsoever. So it's not the car that I want on a couple of different levels, and none the least of which is it doesn't have a normal automatic, which is what I would want because I do drag race. I don't really do a lot of closed circuit, and I believe that anything with that much weight sitting over the front axles, I mean, it does have a positive displacement supercharged V8. Yeah, that's not going to be all that great for handling anyway. I want to see that thing go in a straight line on a drag pack in anger. And we're not going to be able to see that, and it's not going to have the best advantages that it would ever possibly have coming into this because it's got the dual clutch setup. So anyway, not the car for me, not my cup of tea. This girl right here, she's the one I brought to the dance. That's the one I'm going to roll with. So let's see. Destroy 1320. Hey, everybody. How are you, B? Mason? Doing good. Brother Riff's checking in. What's up, B? Lightning Blue Meanie. Oh, wait, Sean E. For the tent fun. I like it. Saying, you want it. Don't fight it. GT500 Red Eye quick or Hellcat quick. Man, I put the thing on a tire, and I can assure you that a regular body Red Eye is going to give that GT500 all it can handle and then some. I just don't see it being really close on the drag strip, or at least not close in that respect. Not close in the backyard brawl type of way. I think that the numbers might be somewhat close, but it's gonna go about doing things a little bit differently. So now that I inhaled some lint or something over here, hang on. But I don't know. I want to see the car. I want to see it do well. But I'm going to get to another aspect of this car here in a second, but without trying to segue too hard into it, I am happy about this. I'm glad that, well, let's just talk about it now, okay? I'm glad that Ford has something that GT owners can look up at and that GT350 owners can kind of look up at. Basically, they've got their supercharged hot rod back, all right? And look, make no mistake, Ford is the one that started this thing, okay? And I'm not talking about everybody goes, oh yeah, the Terminator Mustang. No, bro. I'm talking about the Lightning. The Lightning was the first modern era supercharged hot rod, not including, I get it, not including the freaking Super Coupe. Fine. Super Coupe, which was even a V6 that came before the Lightning. Ford's been throwing these little Eaton superchargers on V8s and V6s for a while and creating a neat little hot rod setup with the Lightning and then with the Termi Cobra. But then they really started to own it back in 2007? Was it 7 that they came out with the first modern GT500? At a time when they didn't ever really have to do that. And so it's cool to see them really bringing that back and kind of owning the segment. Of course, it sucks that it doesn't have a transmission that really I would ever want to live with. But it's good to see him back playing the game, I guess, if you want to call it at any rate. But getting back to it, so you've got the GT500, the Red Eye, all the Hellcat variants, and the ZL1, all basically sitting on a fairly even playing field. They're all going to have their strengths and weaknesses, one via another, but it's going to be more or less sitting on the same playing field. Drop down underneath that, you've got your NA guys, and then below that, well, you've only got Mopar with the 5.7, but the reality is that you've got a couple of layers to this cake now, and they're complete, which is a very good thing. But again, I'm not a player in this game. I'm not going to be buying a GT500 because they did not make the car that I would have wanted to buy. Whether I wanted to own a car with a true manual transmission, which would have been on the table, or if I wanted to own an automatic, because I do the drag race thing, and I'm a big fan of these modern automatics. They're a lot of fun to drive. So anyway, I'm not a player, but it doesn't keep me from being very interested in, for a guy that, you know, former Ford guy, big into Fords as a matter of fact, I was really looking forward to this car and hoping for some big things, but it didn't happen. And as you watch these journalists talk about the car, you can kind of get that same sense. With as dim-witted and as ignorant as they seem to be, they do get one thing right, and that is that they do seem to have a reasonable understanding of what the general public is looking for in this car. And the few that actually got it right really hit the nail on the head when they said that this is not the car for the purist. Although that would be the GT350, they're saying a little bit more than I think they were thinking they were saying when they said that it wasn't the car for the purist. It's a car for somebody who just wants a GT500, but is not really into cars that much. They want to say that they've got one, but they'll never actually exercise that car for what it is, aside from just dragging the thing out to whatever local highway or on-ramp that they've got and just putting their foot to the floor and doing the little flappy paddle thing to impress some, you know, stick with tits they got riding in the passenger seat. That's about the extent of the value of that car. The reality is that the guys that are really into this stuff, that's the ones that I think that they're talking about, and those are the ones that are just they're a little cringy when they hear DSG transmission and 4,200 odd pounds. Let's see. Rift again, checking in, saying, hey, B, Lightning Blue Mini, what's up, you Mason? Notice all the driving videos of the GT500. Nobody's ripping through that dual clutch. They're all slow shifts. I worry about that trans. It's kind of what we were just talking about. I agree with that 100%. Sam's saying, journalists also ruined luxury cars back in the 90s. That's not all they ruined. Alex X Jimmy. But will it run 10.2s as option from the factory? Hey, okay, so let's talk about that as option from the factory. This is kind of an off-topic thing, but hey, Jimmy, how's this? So 309 gear, that's optioned on a red eye. The rear seat delete is also an option on the red eye, which is a Hellcat variant. But even at that, my car is not a red eye, but it is a Challenger, so it's optioned as factory on a Challenger. So isn't that stock? I'd have to say that it is. Anyway, sorry, we'll have to circle back around on that one, brother. Rip saying, I just sold my C5 Z51. That, I would be sad facing on that too. Destroyer saying, the plane. Yeah, he's talking about my tattoo reference. It is a fantasy land that a lot of these guys are living in, man. It drives me nuts. Daycab saying, I miss old school Motor Trend reviews. As do I, man. As do I. Rip saying, so as you know, I have a 2015 Hellcat and a 2009 Challenger SRT8 with coilovers, bigger sway bars, and a strut tire brace, and I will say it does handle pretty good for a big car. In that setup, in the right environment, they actually handle very well. They're very stable. And don't sell yourself short. Motorsports Ranch, there's a couple of guys campaigning SRT8s on coilovers, and they give everybody a fit with those cars. So yeah, they can be made to handle just fine. No doubt about that. Let's see. Natalie's saying, hey, B, last week I ran 708 at 97 with a 150 60 foot, basically tuned entire scat pack. DA was 550. Very nice. That's getting it done with a scat pack. I dig it. That is really good. Just a little tune in a tire, man. Damn near in the sixes, dude. That's killer. Keep rocking, brother. Riff, so like I said before, I got my Hoosier front runners and my 17-inch 305 45 mix. I think I should have got 305 55 because it leaves a big gap. Nah, it's not bad, man. Mine looks pretty good. Yeah, don't get the 55s. That's too much tire. It's going to be way too tall for you. But it would probably hook pretty well. In the 8th, yeah, I know it's in the 8th. Himmy Ed saying, saw that Hellion is coming out with a twin turbo system for the 06 and 19 V8 Indy cars. Yes, they are. Nice to see some aftermarket attention. Could be very cool. Time will tell. Yeah, I think that that kit is going to be pretty nice. There's a kit very similar that the Camaro guys were using. So we'll have to see just how good that kit is and how much power you can actually make. Ground clearance, things like that are going to be an issue. But it is good to see somebody in the aftermarket. LXS Jimmy saying 708 at 97 with a 1560 tune and tire only scat. Very interesting. Yeah. Lots of weight reduction on that. Let's see. Dim Boys running saying, hey, what's up, man? Curious saying Mustang. Yep. Oh, GT 1320. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Contribution to the cause, my friend. Dim Boy saying, so why don't you like dual clutch transmissions? I thought it was better than automatic. There's a couple of reasons. One is they are a little bit overly complicated and they are not quite as durable as, say, a normal torque converter style automatic or a true manual transmission. A lot of that has to do with how the clutches are actuated. And you have to understand that a DSG, you can't drive it like an automatic. In other words, you can't treat it like an automatic. You have to, as a consumer, you have to drive the car like you're driving a manual all the time. In other words, don't let the car sit on an incline. I think that car should have hill assist start, where it basically just will hit the brakes if it feels the car on an incline or a decline. But anyway, getting to it, typically, as the crow flies, so to speak, they're not as durable. You see a lot of failures with exotic cars, and some of that could have to do with the fact that those guys don't know how to drive them. But the failure rate is significant, and the repair cost is very significant. Whereas a transmission for one of these cars may cost $4,500, DSGs can easily double that in cost. And then replacing clutches, it's not the same as replacing clutches it's not the same as replacing a torque converter or a clutch in a manual transmission. A DSG uses, in this case, two separate clutch packs. So think of it more like two motorcycle style clutch packs back to back. Again, it can get real complicated, and because of the complication, it's very expensive, and you just don't have the durability behind it. Let's see. Symphonic saying, I'm actually kind of surprised that Evan Smith was able to pull a 10.6 out of the GT500. Yeah, I think that was the one at Bradenton, if I'm not mistaken, on a really good track with super low DA. Sure. I mean, yeah, why not? The car's making a ton of power and it weighs 4,200 pounds, basically just a scotch less than the Hellcats, and, making good power. It's going to run a number. Don't get me wrong. It's just kind of cringy to think that car's being run, for any significant amount of time on the drag strip. DSG just kind of spooks me a little bit. But I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. This thing could be the next best thing to sliced bread. We won't know until we have some actual use, misuse, and abuse. You guys hear me say that all the time, but we won't know anything until we get some actual data on the car. GS1 saying, I just hit 500 mile break-in period on my 2019 Scat Pack Charger. Should I change the oil now? Also, I just installed a UPR catch can. Good deal on the catch can. Go ahead and change the oil at 500. I did 500 and 1,000. So that's just me. Probably a little bit of overkill, but that's just what I ended up doing with mine. Hey, Rip, thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, man. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, sir. Rip saying, I watched a video on the Typhoon and the Cyclone recently, and I will say those were some really good vehicles for the time. They're actually a lot of fun. And when I lived in Austin, there was a guy that I wouldn't say he dailied his Typhoon, but anytime it wasn't raining, he drove it to work, which was pretty cool. I saw one literally every day it wasn't raining on my way to work every morning. Nimboy's running saying, yeah, everything is equal until the Z06 and Z01 drops. Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, everybody be cool. Everybody be cool until, Z06 rolls out with the C8 rolls out with its own version of the Z06. Christian McVeigh saying, it feels like Ford put the GT500 out for the price range for a lot of its fan base. I'm sure it's an awesome car around a track, but how many GT500s are going to just see one to begin with? Just get a used Hellcat. Hashtag stick with tits. I love it. But here's the thing. Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, and here's the other thing to consider. The GT500 is priced for folks that are in a place where they can afford it. It's not for the guy that's going to be buying a Mustang GT. They're not running it in concert with that in terms of, a little bit more will get you more with a GT500. You can basically buy yourself a Mustang GT and a Mustang GT for one of your buddies for the cost of a GT500. And that's just talking about the base model. So to just put that into perspective, and if it's outright performance that you're looking for, let's be real. If you've got 70 grand to spend and you're looking to run a number, you're not buying a Mustang GT 500, Shelby, Cobra, whatever you want to call it. You're buying something that you can upgrade, something LS powered like a C6 Corvette, Mustang GT, a GTO, something along those lines, something with a huge backing by the aftermarket, and one that'll put you in a situation where you either have something that's more or less bomb-proof up to, say, real talk here, we're talking 650, 750 horsepower, something that'll run deep into the 10s, into the 9s with no issue for far and away less money than the GT500. But again, we're not talking money for time here, which is pretty interesting considering I got this thing sitting right behind me and I'm running my mouth about that, right? Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about, though. This is for the guy that wants something that has a certain mystique, a certain air about it, which is perfectly fine. I mean, manufacturers need cars like that to further the brand, and I get that, but believe me, true car guys that are going to be buying that car are going to be buying it as a platform to start moving forward with mods. Very few of those cars are probably going to remain stock for any real length of time. That is until they start breaking parts. And we'll just see how long it takes them to get to that point. But it's a bit of a bummer because in the era that we live in now, it doesn't take much to beat the best that the manufacturers are offering up. And it used to be that 10-second time slips were good enough. And now that's not the case. And the fact that the Mustang GT500, Shelby, Cobra, whatever, the fact that that thing runs in the 10s, that's not impressive anymore. And that's the other point of this that I wanted to get to. So let's get back into the talk about the GT500. The fact is that it's not any faster in the real lexicon of drag strip things that I like to do. It's not any faster or any slower than a Hellcat, a Red Eye, or a ZL1 to a certain lesser extent, with one huge drawback to the car. So they're all roughly in the 10s. ZL1, yeah, okay, it might be a little bit tougher to get a ZL1 to the 10s, but let's say low 11s, high 10s. It doesn't matter because now we're going to start talking about modifications. Cars that you're taking to the drag strip with any regularity do not stay stock for any real length of time for either safety or performance reasons. And when I talk about tires, like a drag pack setup like I run on my Hellcat, I not only run those tires for performance reasons, I run them for safety reasons because 700 horsepower going down the track at any given point on any given shift could bust the tires loose. And there's nothing more pucker inducing than having your wall haunting car start to turn your entire world upside down at about 120, 130 miles an hour. Believe me, I've done it on several occasions and it's not any fun. So because of that, I've learned my lesson. and I only run a tire designed for what I'm going to be doing with the car, which is why when I hear people talk about as delivered from the factory, it sounds to me like that is some horseshit sideways trying to come up with an excuse type stuff when we start talking about what is stock and what is not. There's stock as in it will roll down the street legally, or it is stock in that it has been prepared properly for the task at hand. Know the difference. It can save you in an argument. However, I will say this. My big question for the GT500 is the transmission going to be fit for using it at a drag strip? I want to bring forth the irony here that the car has a drag strip setting built into the car. It would be ironic in the colloquial sense, like the common use of the word, at least nowadays, for that car to have a drag race setting only to put a set of tires on it for drag race use that frags the transmission that is set up for drag racing. Think about that for a minute. Let that melt your brain. That's the thing that I'm mostly concerned with. If I put a drag race setup on that car that has a drag mode to it, will that car be fit for the type of use that I put my Hellcat through? I don't know how many passes I have on my car, but it's somewhere probably around 200, 250. I really don't know. But I can say this. I don't have any question whether or not my car is fit for the task at any time and it performs flawlessly. I just don't know that the DSG Trans is going to do that for any real length of time. And again, that is the crux of the whole argument for that car. Yeah, it's done it a few times for journalists on street tires, but once that car gets a drag pack wheel and tire setup, that's when we're really going to know how durable that car is. Let's see. Arthur's checking in. Oh, wait a second. I don't want to pass up Christian saying, yeah, bro, I'm waiting to see the vet get a detuned version of that flat plane crank in the C8R. Hopefully it'll be more reliable than the GT350. We have been seeing a lot of issues with the GT350 with frag motors. Don't know why, but I can probably speculate and say that if you're running around in a street car, a 93 octane gasoline, and you're spinning that thing to 8,000 RPM a lot, and it's a V8, which means, and it's a flat plane, which means your secondary harmonics are through the freaking roof. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that thing is going to be rattling itself completely apart. So, just saying. At least at that cubic inch displacement. Arthur saying, me too, at the old Motor Trend Reviews car guy. The Scat Pack is the best bang for the buck muscle car in stock form. And if you don't plan on doing a whole lot with it, I'll agree with that. It's a lot of fun. And, if you're going to basically, stop the mods at about a tune and a drag pack, maybe a little bit of weight reduction, just take the thing out, have a big comfy car that does really sweet burnouts and sounds great. You can have a shitload of fun with that Scat Pack, but just know that your mods are limited, to say the least, when you compare it to the competition. Let's see. Sam saying, man, I miss fast drop tops. Let's see. Speed Freak. Professor Mason, when you install an unlocked PCM for tuning and keep the original one, does the mileage change between the two, or what will you notice with the new one? Does the mileage change between the two? I guess you're talking about the miles on the computer. No, you're going to give them the mileage on the car, and they'll put that into the new computer. Let's see, between the two, or what will you notice with the new one? You won't notice any difference, because when you send your computer off, you're going to send them a read file of what is actually in the computer. So it's basically cloning your computer, which will now have the ability to be tuned. So really, no, there's not going to be any difference whatsoever in that respect, brother. Riff saying, so B, are you saying that the rear tires of your car are 1745? Yes, they are. Because if so, I guess mine will not look so bad. I just did not want to lower it down that much when I tested it. No, yeah, they're 305 45 17s on a set of 9.5-inch wide race bars. Shawnee say, no shave November for me. 3 weeks head start. Nice. I like it. Yeah, my shit comes in kind of funky too. It's white as hell, so I'm gonna look like Santa Claus. Sam saying, if it's CAN bus system, it should be saved in the cluster or BCM as well. I just changed out the ECM of my 05 Ram and it saved the mileage in the cluster. Yeah, you'll be good, man. But I know you do give the mileage with the ECU when you send it in. Then boys running saying, wow, that's why I'm not getting a 2020 GT500. I'll be damned if I pay over 80 grand for a Mustang. Cheers on that, my man. Yeah, right there with you on that. I can't imagine. I mean, I get it. It's a GT500, so it's supposed to mean something, but it doesn't. See, and that's my point. If it's something that I can have an emotional connection to. So let's talk again about the GT500. I've been hanging out for a minute, but I do want to talk about this. Yes, it's hard to justify 80 grand for a Mustang, but it's also pretty difficult to justify 70 or 80 grand for a Challenger or, you know, whatever a ZL1 costs. I get it. I completely understand it, but I'll take that a step farther. I won't be spending $80,000 on a Mustang that doesn't give me an emotional feel, an emotional attachment to it the way that the old GT500 did. If you were to offer me on a platter, if you said, look, man, I've got a 2010 GT500, or you can have this brand new GT500, I would have to go with the older one because that's the car that pulls my heartstrings. It's got the manual transmission. It's got everything that I would want or need in a street bruiser, cruiser, light them up at will, take it to the drag strip, row gears, do all the fun stuff, not try to set the world on fire. That's not the point of that car. The point of that car is to be all that you could ever have imagined a big block muscle car to be. That's what that car is there to emulate. Trying to do something else with that car, to me, goes against the mission statement of the GT500 as it sits. Let's go back in time. Okay, so this is the other thing. God, I keep getting sidetracked. So anyway, check this out. Back in the day, you had in the 60s, right? You had the 1960 pick a year GT350, and then you had the GT500. The GT500 KR is the one that a lot of folks will go back and take a look at. Do you guys realize that the GT500s were basically luxury coupes? They weren't really, I mean, they were muscle car-ish. Cringy to even call them that because the end of that 428 Cobra jet that they used was just basically a boat anchor. It made a bunch of torque. You couldn't rev it to any real RPM that would even come close to signifying being race car-ish. GT350 would probably walk all over a GT500 real world conditions. You know, it's just the way that it was back then. But it's interesting that the GT500, when it was re-released in 2007, really was more the muscle car. And it had a little bit of both. It had the athletic qualities of a GT350, but just the brute force that you would have hoped that like a boss car would have from back in the day, not a Shelby GT500. So fast forward to today, and now the GT500 is this flag bearer for technology or for lifestyle, or however you want to really swing that. It's cringy a little bit. And I think that they just lost track of who they were and what they were there to, let me rephrase that, who they were or who they are and what they were really bringing to the market back when the GT500 in the modern era was released. It meant so much to have that car when we really didn't need to have it. This is before the Challenger SRT8. There was no Camaro at the time, yet Ford released the GT500 with no competition to speak for it. So that's why when I see the GT500 now, when they were talking about bringing back the GT500, I was so excited because I was thinking, oh shit, here we go. We're going to have the hot rod wars are coming back. 6-speed GT500 versus a 6-speed Scat Pack. I'm sorry, a 6-speed Hellcat. would have been amazing. It'd have been such a fun race to see at the drag strip. Automatic for automatic. Fun race to see at the drag strip. This is going to be sweet. What's the price going to be? Is this going to be a darling of the aftermarket as well? And then you hear about the DSG. Took all the wind out of my sails, deflated everything, turned every chubby into a windsock that I had for that car, and just totally, I quit thinking about it the minute I heard DSG. And that's a real bummer because I was so looking forward to that car. Really bums me out. So anyway, getting back to it. Sorry about that. Let's see. Riff saying I did have a really hard time getting them to put the weights where it cleared the brake calipers though. Oh, talking about so you got to tell them to put the weights on the outside of the barrel. You can't, if they try to put them on the inside, you'll run into a problem with that. Let's see, LSX, Riff 33, you have to do the hammer on weights for the front runners. No room for stick-ons. That is correct. Actually, I got some stick-ons on this one. Maybe I don't. I can't remember. It's been 100 years. Let's see. Dickab saying, as a commercial driver, I have a lot of experience with automated manual, which is basically a DCT. I can tell you right now, it's not the best of both worlds. It's the worst, I'm sure, in a Porsche. Yeah. I'm right there with you on that. The only things that I've ever heard about those cars is that they're the worst of both worlds. I've only driven a handful of cars. The last one I can remember was a BMW M5. I think it was an M5 that had the DSG, and I absolutely hated it. I could have sworn something was just wrong with that thing. Rift is asking about the weights. Yeah, those are the old school kind. I think Jimmy's already jumped on that one. Where they tap the inner lip of the wheel, not enough clearance, for sure. Daycab saying push rods and cubes is better than cams and chains, for sure, brother. For packaging and for sound. Riv saying, because so far with 18-inch front runner, I cannot get the weights to fit on there with the brakes. Yeah, you're going to have to go old school weights on that, brother. TU saying, finally, I made it to it live. I'm in late, but I'm glad to make it. Happy to have you, TU. Shawnee's saying, Rip, my front skinnies had the weights fall off as soon as I drove it. There's barely a vibration. I hear that. I probably need to get mine rebalanced too. Easy Rider saying, best bang for the buck is the 2020 Camaro LT62. Yeah, I think that one, they've got their inexpensive version. What are they calling that one again? And not the SS, it's like an RSSS or whatever. Anyway, kind of a cool concept. It looks like a 6-cylinder, but it's got the V8 engine in it. I think Riley with RP did a quick video on one of those. Anyway, check that out. And yeah, that's a tough one to beat, especially when you consider the upside. You can upgrade that LT quite a bit. Make some powers. Shawnee's saying best bang for buck is 5-liter strip or 10-speed automatic. It will crush a 6.2. Yeah, maybe, but you can do a lot with that 6.2. You can do a lot with the Mustang or the Camaro. It's not going to... they're going to be close. Crush, it might be a harsh word to use, but I don't know. I'm a fan of both of them, so I don't really care. I like all of them now. I used to hate the Camaro, but it started to grow on me a little bit over time. And Christian's saying, I just don't wish the Camaro wasn't ugly as sin. I actually don't mind the ugly Camaro anymore. And the reason why I don't mind the ugly Camaro is... and there are a couple of colors where the ugly Camaro looks really good. Black looks good because everything just blends together. White looks good because of the contrast. And I've seen a red one, and the red one looked really good. All of them look really good on a drag pack, by the way. Jeff's saying, my friend bought a leg maker intake for his 2012 Super Bee. I was telling him to do the Hellcat conversion. He should have listened to you. Leg Maker makes some great parts. Chris has fantastic customer service, second to none. And if I were to do just a cold air type of an intake on my car, it would definitely be a Leg Maker. I would choose Leg Maker probably over all of them just for the look, and I know that it's going to sound good. And that's the way I would roll, because after drag race test or drag testing, dyno testing, everything else, I know some people have gotten gains out of their stuff, out of their cold air kits. Not at this power level. You're not going to see anything, at least nothing worth really writing home about, so far as I can tell anyway. As far as actual gains, picking up ET, just haven't seen it. Let's see. Riff saying, I hear you, Shawnee. Shawnee saying, Riff, think you have the exact same Hellcat I do. Nice. Christian saying, there is a million S197 Mustangs out there, but the GT500 has always had a presence to it. Took a ride in a 2014 GT500 recently and was consistently turning heads. They're good-looking cars, and they're a lot of fun to drive. Man, if you ever get a chance to drive one, they are a freaking riot to drive. Easily one of the most fun vehicles I've ever driven in my life. So much so that I am still to this day shocked I haven't ever bought one. Shawnee's saying, checking out, saying good night. New drive shaft is being put on tomorrow in the AM. I hope for a 149/60 foot in my near future, but I have to really go for it to get that time. Sean, I need you to get me that measurement. Make sure that they get that measurement, please. You know what I'm talking about, brother. Rift is saying, I think we do, man. Although next week I will have my new unlocked PCM with my new tune, so hopefully that helps. Should be good, man. TU saying, the passing of Carroll Shelby has allowed Ford to develop this 2020 GT500 into what it is now. I guarantee that if Carroll was still here, 2020 GT500 would be more in vain of the 1314, which I wholeheartedly agree. You know, I think he would have seen the value in the DSG, but really only for stuff like the Ford GT, where it actually makes sense. But no, I don't think he'd have been too cool with putting that type of a transmission in this type of a car. I mean, it's, you know, it's like peanut butter and cactus sandwich. I mean, it is not something that really goes together the way you would hope. Rip said, I'm really hoping that Hemi Fever actually does some kind of tune revision instead of just sending me a tune. That's you're going to have to work with him on that. TU saying Trinity 5.8 with a manual option and revamped 5.8 liter engine. That would actually be super cool. Throw a stroker setup on that 5.2, make it a normal firing order, you know, cross plane, as opposed to a flat plane. Yeah, that could be real nice, as a matter of fact. Little old school flavor for your new school Mustang. Car guy saying, hopefully this transmission won't be like the Focus and Fiesta. Yeah, exactly. What was it? Torque shift? Is that what they called it? I forget. Anyway, nobody liked those things. Were terrible. Rip's saying, hey, B, do you think I really need weights on the front tire in order to go to the track? I mean, you don't need them. It just depends on, you know, if they're, how out of balance they are. But the skinnies typically, I mean, I've known guys just throw skinnies on a car and go drive it. So I don't know. It's always good to get them balanced and have it checked out, but hell, it may end up throwing the weights anyway. So you might be back to square one at that point. Let's see. Symphonic saying, GM called the cheap Camaro the LT1, 32 grand, I think. Let's see. Getting back to it. Them boys running saying, it's the 2019 Camaro LT that's the trim you're talking about. That's right. Rip saying, I think I'll also take out the front passenger seat and the rear seats if needed, but other than that, I think the front passenger seat and the base system would do the most, if anything. Yeah, I mean, if you're pulling weight out, really the seat is going to be the heaviest thing that you're going to be pulling out of it, aside from switching wheels and tires. So that's how I would play that. Sam saying, I believe the ZL1 and ZR1 is the only supercharged V8 convertible you can currently buy. I believe you're right about that. We're saying, by the way, where do you think I should tell Sean, let's see, from Hemi Fever to put my shift points at on my automatic Hellcat? He should know on that. I prefer no less than 6,200 though. Just don't try to have it shifted to the moon. It's not going to do you any good. Wide open, and besides it, so that's it, the question is a little loaded, because you're not going to be able to really honestly set the shift points unless you have the car on a sticky tire on a drag strip. It's always going to be a moving target, but the idea is to try to get it within 1% one way or another of like 6,250. Okay, so you know, 6,300 would be cool, 6,200 would be cool. somewhere in that range would be just fine. But you're going to notice some variances with tire slip, tire height, things like that. Those are the things that are going to throw you off. So somewhere around the 6250 range, that's what I like. I've heard other tuners try to dial these things up to like 66, 67, 6800 RPM. Hell no, I ain't spinning this thing that high. And I've run 1020s with this thing, 1030s, string of 1030s with 1020s like every other pass, like 1028, 1030, 1029, 1032. Like clockwork with this thing with the lower shift points. And I never felt that the car was making any decent power dialing it anywhere past that. So just my own 2 cents on that deal. So you saying the Gen 6 ZL1 and Gen 6 SS1LE actually look great, especially in hyper blue metallic. That's the other color that they do. They look really good in hyper blue. I like the SS1LEs too, but really like the ZL1. God, what I could do with the ZL1 if I had my hands on one. Dim Boys running saying, I think the 1314 S197 was the best looking modern Mustang, which is why I bought a 2014 Mustang GT. Great car, by the way. Shawnee's saying, Riff, 6,300 shift points. I guess Shawnee likes 6,300. LSX Jimmy, front passenger seat is like 55 pounds. Rear seat assembly is about 50 pounds. The system in the trunk is surprisingly lightweight. Yeah, the box is 14. Let's see, the box is 14 pounds and the tray, the actual trunk tray is 12. So yeah, you can still pull a decent amount of weight. Rift, I've seen people on YouTube put it at 7,000 RPMs on a Hellcat, but shifting that seems dangerous. Let me just tell you this, man. I don't need to shift mine at $7,000 to run the ET that I'm running. None of the Hellcats that I've run against, I haven't lost to any of them because they were shifting at higher shift points. So there's that to consider. But yeah, I don't feel comfortable spinning it that high. And especially when there's no need to. The other thing you got to remember is, okay, look, so let's say from your point of view, you've got a dyno chart and it comes up and then it kind of flatlines like this. But let's say it flatlines at, let's say 600 horsepower. Let's make it easy. Let's say it flatlines at 500 horsepower at the dyno. It is flatlines. That's great. If that's your last gear, then yeah, don't shift out of it. But if you have to shift, as that chart flatlines, your torque curve is dying. If your horsepower, as RPM increases, if that horsepower is flat, that means your torque is going down. Horsepower is going up, you're at least maybe maintaining torque. The point of that is, if you are shifting a gear at that point, you will not have the same torque hit that you would if you shifted it earlier. That's why I like to shift the cars a little bit earlier. I don't have to spin them as high, which means my valve train is more stable, because you've got to remember, guys, this is a Hemi, which means it's got them big ass valves, which are heavy, which means that your valve train is not going to be the most stable thing underneath the hood of that car. Keep the RPMs down. You've got boost to make up for airflow, so don't worry too much about that. The car will be dropping torque as you're running through the top of the gears. If you want to stretch anything out, stretch out fifth gear, but that's the only gear that I would stretch out. And I wouldn't do it. I didn't do it on my car, so I can't suggest doing it on anybody else's. Let's see. Motor tube is one. Well, you know, let him do what he does with his stuff, man. I just won't do it to mine. You know, if he's running 1020s at stock boost, we can have a talk. Riff saying, don't know if I trust that guy, though. You know, if somebody's telling you to spin your car to 7,000 RPM, unless they're going to cut the check when the thing comes apart, I wouldn't listen to him. Christian saying motor tube is the last person I would trust. Let's see. Riff is saying, so by the way, I put the shorter sway bar arms on my Hellcat in order to fit the 17-inch rims. Oh, talking about the end links. But I could not figure out which direction they were basically, what was top and what was bottom. So what I would, it's not that hard. I mean, thinking about this from the from the passenger side, the sway bar end link just drops down. It doesn't really matter because it's just a solid piece of metal with a couple of grommets sorry, brain fart. Anyway, there ain't nothing to it. I don't think you can get it wrong. Jimmy's saying Mike at OST shifts is at like 7,100. Dude is wild. Yeah, dude is kind of wild. And yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. Because there's some people, he's not here to defend himself. So I don't want to start teeing off on somebody that can't defend himself. We were saying, I don't know if it really matters though. Do you run fuel shutoff speed or do you run a limiter? Oh, Sam is asking, do you run fuel shutoff speed or do you run a limiter? Well, it does have rev limiters, so yeah, and those are fuel cutoff rev limiters, so it does have that. I think that's what you're asking. Not sure what you're asking, brother. Riff's asking again, by the way, can you explain to me what torque management is and why it would be good to have it turned off in my tune? Well, that Jimmy's saying there is no top or bottom. That's what I was saying. Yeah, there's no, like, at the bushing, I'm going, there's not a, I was thinking there's not like a fat and then a skinny or anything like that. I was like, wait, there's not one. So yeah, it doesn't matter. I think you can get it wrong. So why would to have it turned off in my tune? No, don't turn off your torque management with these HP90s. In fact, HP90s so are very durable transmissions. They will take a lot more than what they're rated for, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that you're still running some level of torque management. What torque management does in essence is it will limit the amount of torque going through the engine through some means. And in this case, you'll see it on the timing data log. You'll see it. Let's say you're running along at 16 degrees at wide open throttle. You'll see the timing go to 0 or even negative at the shift, and then come back up to where it was before. You're not losing any ET. I've done tests with this on several occasions. And the cars with 0 torque management were only quicker on one pass, and I think that was more of a lottery pass for the car anyway. But there's no reason. In fact, the car will actually shift a little bit better with torque management in play. You can numb torque management to a certain level, but the reality is I don't think you really have to do that. I think you leave torque management in play and save the transmission. It's well worth it in my opinion. And just don't go in there and get crazy with a lot of other settings. The H90 will manage just fine for a long Rich saying, well, the reason I thought there was a top or bottom of the sway bar end link is because there's a little part in the middle that bulbs out. Yeah, that's just where they, oh, and here's Jimmy. That's just where they, man, don't sweat it. They're stock. I think they're stock end links that were just cut, and I can't remember. Jimmy beat me to it. Yeah. So, Rich is asking also, so what is up with them trying to sell me different lug nuts and spacers for the Raystar wheels I got? Are they just trying to sell me more stuff or what? Well, if it's the Raystars like these, you have to have the separate lug nuts because it's a shanked lug nut. It's not an acorn style lug nut. And I don't have any to show you because they're holding the wheels onto the car. But yeah, that's something that you can't just pull off of the thing and show you. But the spacers, I don't know about spacers because I don't run spacers with my wheels. What they may be talking about, though, is hub-centric rings, which I would say you definitely need the hub-centric rings for sure. Let's see. Shawnee's saying he runs the 17-inch drag wheels on the back with no issues. Rich is saying, no, mine seem to be the same as the wheels I have now, so I think it's okay. I did test them on there. Good deal. So let's get started. So anyway, getting back to it. I'd love to sit here and say that, I had an opportunity to drive that GT500, but for some reason, I just wasn't invited to that little party. But I will say this. I'm hoping that we see something good come from the Ford camp with this. I would love to be proved wrong by that car. I would love to see something that is really worth talking about again in a positive way, because there's so much negative that really seems to have been coming from, every camp leading into this about what it's going to take to beat the Hellcat, what it's going to, from the newer cars, what it's going to take to, for the Mustang to really get back on top. And in this world that we're living in, it's going to take two things, and it has to be able to do both of these consistently. It's got to be able to beat a Hellcat on tire for tire. And it's got to be able to hold its own with some of the aftermarket modded cars on a roll race. And, let's face it, the outlaw type stuff, roll racing on the street, Mexico, that's the kind of stuff that people watch. That's the kind of stuff that people can relate to. And if this Mustang can't do that, it's going to get, it's going to get brushed off by the younger crowd. So, the older guys look at that car and they kind of get what it is, but again, it doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't resonate with a lot of guys that grew up rowing their own gears. It just doesn't tick the right boxes for a lot of us. And that's why I think it's getting a little bit of the bad press that it maybe has. And maybe the journos is dim-witted, and the fact that a broke clock's right twice a day kind of way did get it right in a certain way by saying that the GT350 is the better car, by saying that the GT350 is more or less the car that you need to spend your money on because it offers up a far richer driving experience. All the technology in the world basically makes that GT500 more or less far too clinical. That's one of the big complaints way back in the day when the GTRs were re-released. Was that they were so clinical and that they were just over the top, basically computers with four-wheel, lots of power and all of that. That was one of the big kickers for those cars, is that it was like driving in a video game. Well, that's neat, and that's kind of a calling card when you're that type of car coming from that part of the world. But here in the States, that kind of stuff just doesn't play very well. It's one of those things where it can be a little bit cringy, and guys don't like cringy, and guys don't, this is a red meat and potatoes type of car, not a sushi and wasabi type of car. That's kind of the weird blending that you're getting with this GT500. And a lot of guys are having a hard time warming their palate up to that. And regardless of what you might say as far as what the car's potential could be, we just don't know what the potential is, because we don't know how far we can take that thing with the parts that are on it now. Will the engine hold together with more boost? We've already seen what turning GT350s to 8,000 RPM. Doubt it, because it's got a normal firing order. But the question remains, what about the typewriter tick? Is this thing going to have an issue with that? Who's to say? We just have to wait and see. DSG transmission, we've beaten that thing completely to death. What about the other going to be fit up to the task of taking that car to the drag strip on a tire that's actually meant to be run on? I'm not sure, but we're going to have a great opportunity to see that here pretty soon. Fingers crossed Ford actually gets it right, but I just don't see it happening, guys. And I still think that you're going to see tons of Hellcats just basically sniping after those cars at the drag strip, tire for tire. Again, Slash saying, what's up, B? What's up, man? Sean saying, oops, 305-45-17. That's correct. King's Eye checking in. What's up, B Max? What's up, King? Riff saying, I will say the GT500, or at least the new one, looks really good, especially with the times they got with the stock tires. Yeah, they look great. And so far, they're running really good. And that's data. That's something you can't really take away from that car. I know the mile an hour was strong too, but I will tell you this. The big issue that I've got is that nobody decided to show up with that car and throw a drag pack and tire setup on it. Shown up with that stuff in a funky looking big ass backpack look, man, if you're going to let me drive this car on a drag strip, we're going to drive this thing on a drag strip the way everybody is going to be driving this thing on the drag strip. I ain't here to mess with no stock tires. I ain't here to mess with no worrying about none of that. I don't want to hear about launch control. I don't want to hear about any of that stuff. You tell me how to get this car from park to drive, put these tires on the car, and let's get a real number out of these cars. Let's see what this thing will really do, because without that kind of data, we're all left wondering what in the world is going on here. And that is the biggest key difference, is that nobody is really talking about that. Let me put it to you another way. When the Hellcat was released in 2015, the car was NHRA rated with a set of 275, 45, 20 Nitto Tri-5 drag radials. The car went out and ran a 1085 in more or less like 200 or 500 foot DA. I mean, it was what it was, but the car was run on drag radials. They tested it for the track on drag radials. Does that mean it was a factory option to have drag radials on a Hellcat? If Dodge themselves put a drag radial onto the Hellcat to NHRA certify it, does that mean that that would have possibly been an acceptable tire to put on the back of the car? I wonder. Hey, Jimmy, what do you think? Does that argument play? Anyway, getting back to it. Yeah, so it's one of these weird situations where the car wasn't even tested with the right kind of tire in the right environment. And I think that long-term testing in that environment is what is needed to actually show if the potential of that car can be actualized with the parts that it's got on it. And the other thing too is there's nothing coming from Tremec, which is the manufacturer of that transmission, to state, of all the people in the world, Tremec, I mean, you would think they would say, yeah, man, we've been testing this thing on drag strips for 3 years. You got to get yourself one of these. They're awesome. They're a little bit too quiet about it. A little bit hush-hush for my taste. So anyway, back to it. Hey, Demonology's in the house. Everybody say what up, Demonology. Saying B. Mason the Legend. What's up, Demonology? Riff saying not 305 45s. Yeah, 305 45 17. Jimmy saying, it's simple. All it will take for the 2020 GT500 to beat the Hellcats and Demons is a little time for development and some consumers' open wallets. Hell, they already have put the 2020 Super in the 9s. Yeah, guys, that's something to consider too. Lots of folks already talking about that thing, and a lot of people spending a lot of money to get that Super into the 9s, but they are campaigning them like you wouldn't believe now. Didn't take long. I told you. Didn't I? Riff checking in with Demonology to you. Hey, yo, Herman. Got the fist bump. I like it. Riff saying, what's up, Demonology? Other than B. Mason, you're one of the only people I watch when it comes to Mopar stuff. I like it. Dog Power saying, Demonology, what up? Read the tree. I love it. Demonology saying, B. Mason is my go-to guy. I like it, brother. Good seeing you in here, man. Sweet. AZ saying, correction, the competition is looking to beat out the Demon and then the Hellcat Red Eye. They can keep going at it. Rip saying, I mean this honestly, bro, but I'm coming for your soul with my Hellcat. He's talking to Demonology. Demonology saying, Leah Pritchett told me win the tree, win the race. That's true. And also stick to a very strict diet, weigh about 120 pounds, and have that advantage working for you as well. I'm just playing. Let's see. Riff saying, in fact, that's why he's modding his cars to go after Herman. I like it. Let's see. Christian saying, I saw a kid who got invited to the GT500 event saying it drove and felt like a video game in a positive manner. May God have mercy on all of us. True that, man. Demonology saying, Rift, are you donating your soul to the altar of Mopar? I like it. Rift saying, yeah, it's all good. It should be fun. King checking in saying, Mopar has that sound that is addicting. They do sound good. I love the fact that Ford has aftermarket availability, but I just have to go where my heart takes me. Mopar just sucks at catering to their base. You know, I tell you something, man. That's part of the issue that it's taken so long to just get aftermarket intake manifolds for these things, for the NA guys. But now that we've got it, this is going through the Holly. Now that we've got it, there's some things that have to be understood. First of all, somebody's got to develop a rear gear. And for me, that is what's going to cap it. Holly's got a great looking intake. I would love to put a cam together to go along with that intake manifold, to be able to spin these things to the RPM that they need to be spun to. But that's almost going to require a built short block, because I wouldn't want to spin a 392 to anything past about 6,500 RPM. Shit, damn it. Now we're starting to get circular. But I think you see where I'm going with this. And you like the fact that you've got basically an 11-second car in your driveway, with the right wheel and tire and conditions and all of that. But, just knowing that coming into it, then you're going to be fine with that thing. And they're a lot of fun to drive. They're just not very fun to mod, at least not the NA stuff. Let's see. We got Michael checking in with Thurman. LSX saying, here comes Jimmy saying he's going to have to donate his savings account to the Ultra Mopar if he wants to put that cat in the 9.0 territory. Pretty much. But you know what? If you got the money, you can spend it, man. That's the beauty of it. Riff saying it hasn't happened yet. Let's see. Demonology saying, I don't know what happened to him. Let's see. I think he's focused on his... talking about SRT Mush. Yeah, he's probably focused on his business right now. XCAP saying, what are your thoughts on Panteras? Are there any good? I always wanted a mid-engine V8 car, but the C8 is way over my pay grade. Dude, if the C8 is your pay grade, good luck finding a Pantera. They use a Gaytrag rear... it's a mid-engine car. Transaxle is a Gaytrag 5-speed. Can be pricey, but you can upgrade them. It's a 351 Cleveland in most of them. So at least you're starting off in a pretty decent place. They're pretty good cars all the way around. For something built in the 60s, like I said, but they're not from the factory. So just know that coming into it. In fact, by today's standards, outright slow from the factory. But they've got a great look, and if nothing else, they're cool to look at. Michael Johnson checking in with the let's see, them boys running saying, why didn't they just put a manual transmission in the Demon and the Red Eye? Because it would not have performed as well. Plus, it's tougher to make those transmissions manage that kind of power where the automatic can. Let's see. Rift is asking about how much does a 309 take off? It's about 1.5 to 0.2 is what you'll shave with that gear. Let's see. Riff checking in with Herman again. Let's see. Christian saying Panteras aren't exactly cheap either. They do look sick. Yeah, they do. Michael Smith saying S197 or a Boss 302. I go Boss 302 on that one. But at any rate, yeah, I mean, the thing with the GT500 for me is that it's not really tugging at my heartstrings. It doesn't really do anything for me. Yeah, I would love to get my hands on one, but the reality is that it's just really, again, it's just not my cup of tea with that type of a transmission. And since I don't care about going, deep into the nines, it's the last thing I want to do is to have a car that I can't enjoy no matter how I want to drive it. I don't want to pay for the luxury of having something that sucks. That's just not really my thing. Because I've seen, if you're not going to mod the car, then the GT500 could be really good. And if you're not really worried about the difference in the driving experience between a DSG and a normal automatic, or if you find out that this DSG that's in the GT500 acts a whole lot like an automatic, whereas other DSGs don't, this might be an evolutionary step that could be a great car. But again, you've got to remember that if that is the case, and this is another point that I want to bring up to you guys about the GT500, let's say that is the case. Well, this is the first one that I know of that would have been able to actually accomplish that mission, which means basically I'm paying to beta test this transmission. And I'm sorry, but I'm not really going to be all that enthusiastic about paying for the right to beta test this transmission. Definitely one of those cases where you do not want to be one of the first people buying one of these cars. If you've got the kind of coin to where you can scratch a check and just buy one, that's one thing. I think that there would be some interesting transmission tuning opportunities with this car. But I don't know that, again, I don't feel like I want to be the guy that's going to be paying Ford for the opportunity to beta test this thing long term with big time financial implications if this thing does go south and Ford, for whatever reason, decides they don't want to cover it under warranty. Now, granted, the first time that happens, and if it's a legit situation, again, the guy's taking a car to the drag strip, a car that, again, let me remind you, does have a drag strip mode, and the guy is on a tire. If the guy comes back and says, oh, the transmission fragged after 60 passes, that's going to be a huge problem. That's going to send, you talk about going viral. That would be the last, in this community, that would be the absolute last thing that you would ever want to have happen to that car, is to have it have a reputation to be a native glass. 392s are already living through that when it comes to, boost or doing anything else really with a 392. But, they still work great in A for the most part. But you take something like a transmission and start having those things fail, that's really going to have some problems. And especially if that goes out into the world via YouTube or what have you, Facebook or whatever other kind of contraption is out there to get the stuff out there. Riff saying, so Mason, have you put a tune on your car yet, or just a trans tune? Just the trans tune, man. I'm not messing with the engine tune on this, other than the parameters that I need to accommodate the transmission tune itself, which is basically some rev limits, and then I've added a little fuel under higher load scenarios just to be a little bit on the safe side. So by that logic, you could say I neutered it, but not by very much. I'm actually running stock timing, and all of my spark modifiers are basically still stock. So yeah, still running that on my car. The stock parameters is what I'm talking about on my car, and I didn't see any reason to mess with it too much. And again, I've already lived through owning really fast cars, guys. And keep this in mind. I know that I'm real mother hen-ish, and I don't really, I'm always trying to, couch anything that I say with, look, just know that, you're not going to get a ton of, where I'm coming from here, guys. Look, the fact is, I didn't see any real reason to do it. The car, my goal with the car was just to see how deep in the tens I could get basically a stock Hellcat to go with a little bit of trans tuning and a little bit of race gas added to it. That's it. I don't have any expectations from this thing. I don't care. That's the other thing. I have the luxury and the ability to just flat out not give a shit. I love driving my car. I love my Hellcat. And so I wasn't really motivated, I guess you could say, to start throwing the kitchen sink at this car, because I don't want to ruin it, to be honest with you. And that's how I see the direction, anyway, a lot of these cars go when guys start throwing mods at them, throwing tunes, throwing pulleys, throwing this, throwing that. It's great if that is what you want to do to the car, and that's what motivates you, and that's what makes you happy. By all means, man, do it. But this is what makes me happy. And so far, it's been a freaking riot. And, not that many people can say they've run 1020s with a car that, I just had it emissions checked. And I'm running stock catalytic converters on this thing, guys. It's not like I'm making a full out effort on this thing. But that's pretty much where the car is going to stay. And that's why I really enjoy the Mopar stuff, is that I can have a car that does exactly what I want it to do. It's big, it's comfy, and I love taking this thing on road trips. It does everything that I would want a car to do. I don't need anything else. So I'm having fun with it. And that's why I haven't done anything else to it, tune-wise, or pulley-wise, or exhaust-wise, or anything else for that matter. Might get some rims, though. To you saying, Boss 302 all day over the S197. Hell yeah. Do like the Boss 302 a lot. Demonology saying, Rift, I don't have soul. That's why I am snatching souls. I like it. Let's see. Christian's asking, what was your childhood dream car? Shelby Cobra, Shelby Daytona Cobra. But aside from that, the 69 Roadrunner was one of my childhood favorites too. Let's see. Also loved Bugs when I was a kid. Rick is saying, for me, a childhood car is a 240SX. Very cool car, by the way. Although I am 40 now, so I did get one of those at one point. Very cool. Ripped and Demonology going back and forth. Xcash, I think, just figured out that Panteras went nuts on their pricing. Yeah, for sure. Rip say, I will say, Mason, when it comes to somebody who has done really good times with their cars, you have done a damn good job. Thank you very much. Demonology, B Mason, what is this Mustang Dragonfire engine people keep asking me about? I have no idea. I don't know what they're talking about, man. I have not been taking any interest in any of that lately. I don't know. Is that what they're trying to call the new GT500 engine? I have no idea. I don't even know if I've even heard of that. Anyway, I'll let you know when I find out. I haven't been paying attention to it, brother. Let's see. We got some folks hanging out with Demonology. Let's see. Floyd saying, I'm going to try and be at HRP Friday night. You going to be out there? Should be some pretty good air for sure. I will be there, Floyd. I will absolutely be there on Friday. Be there nice and early. Going to try to get a couple of personal bests out of the car, and then I will park it and see what happens as the night progresses. I have a feeling it is going to be a mad house. Make sure you use lanes 7 and 8 too, please. Let's see. Chris is saying, Demonology, your car is rad, dude. I would have bought a Demon if I wasn't broke college kid barely affording rent. Yeah, believe me, I remember those days. Some of the best days, though. We're saying, what do you think the best place to get a tune for my Hellcat? I was thinking either Jay Green or HHP. HHP is pretty good. Obviously, Pike's Performance Tunes is also very good. Jay Green, not bad with Hellcats. Haven't heard a lot of him with Hellcats. A lot of him with NA stuff. You got Mike with OST floating around out there, but a lot of these tunes. Listen, I'd say this, guys, but a lot of these tunes have already been lifted. A lot of these guys are running lifted tunes or versions of lifted tunes anyway. At this stage of the game, everybody has seen up everybody else's skirt, so there's not a whole lot. Josh over at HHP is really good. He probably gets you nailed down pretty quickly. It depends on which direction you want to go with that. But I'd say Josh at HHP, Alex Pikes, or those are the only ones that I've actually spoken to Josh, and I know he knows his stuff. So yeah, I would say those. Demonology is saying his tuner is Kurt Dusteroff. Heard some good things about his stuff too. We're saying also, I keep hearing everyone out there talk about how the DA is negative something. I never have more than 600 here. That's too bad. Yeah, we are living in negative DA right now, which makes life real nice. And 91 octane sucks out there in California. For sure it does. Symphonic sucks bad. Symphonic saying the Mustang Dragonfire is a Shelby of America SEMA car. Oh, 800 horsepower and tacky graphics. Maybe that's where I saw that. Speed Freak said, hey, B, is it possible to buy a new red-eye drive shaft anywhere yet? Not that I'm aware of, man. The red-eye / Demon drive shaft is practically impossible to get unless you've got a VIN to run with. You're not going to be able to get your hands on one, which sucks. I mean, I can't believe a drive shaft would be VIN locked, but that's what we're living with. We had multiple Mopars donated his to the cause, so I'm running a red-eye drive shaft in my car, and I freaking love it. I wish that Mopar would see fit to sell parts. I mean, it's actually part of the name, motor parts, but you can't sell a drive shaft or a hood or any other parts that come on a Demon or a Red Eye unless you have the VIN to do it, which is weird. Heard East Coast Mopar parts may have them, would prefer to go the route you did. Like I say, if you can get your hands on one, I would say get your hands on one before you go with DSS or anybody else at this stage of the game. You know, we'll find out if that newer style drive shaft is actually going to work from DSS here relatively soon on Sean's car. But the reality is that, you know, when you've got an option with the Hellcats to be able to run a drive shaft that is not only a stock Mopar part, but one that is guaranteed not to vibrate at any speed under any circumstances, you kind of take that up. And you know, my thoughts on that are, you know, I've seen aftermarket drive shafts break. I've seen and had my experience with aftermarket drive shafts has been god awful. So yeah, I'm just not going to go aftermarket anymore with drive shafts. I'll stick with what I've got. Works great at this power level, and there's plenty of demons running around on stock drive shafts that have had no problems, and they're running 9s with those things. So, you know, or similar times at least to what my car is running with their demons, you know, 1020s, 10 teens, what have you. Not having any issues whatsoever. Rift Assassin, so what do you think is better, a dyno tune or a street tune? That is, okay, so a dyno tune, if it's on a Mustang dyno, also known as an eddy current dyno, where you can load test the vehicle, that is far better than a street tune, because you can, when you load test the vehicle, think of it like this. You can actually turn the chassis dyno into an engine dyno, in that on an engine dyno and on a Mustang dyno, you can tell the dyno, do not let the engine turn past, say, 4,200 RPM. No matter how much throttle you give it, wide open throttle, that water brake or the electric the electric current will break the car, will break the drums basically to where the car cannot accelerate past 4,200 RPM. Those types of tests are crucial to test injector duty cycle. They're crucial to test very high load knock sensitivity of the tune. That's where that comes into play. You cannot replicate that on the street unless you're doing the test on a very steep incline that goes on for a very long time, a very long amount of time, or distance, I should say. So that's why a true dyno tune in that respect is better. Now, if we're talking about an inertia style dyno, like an old Dyno Jet 248, something along those lines, that's not going to be as good, because that type of dyno is literally only there to act as a data acquisition device in terms of how much power the thing is making that's sitting on it. But it cannot take into account wind resistance. It can't take into account any load variances like weight. It doesn't know anything about that. It only knows how fast that 660-pound drum is being accelerated. So that's why it's better to have a true dyno tune, but it has to be done on the right kind of dyno, and it has to be done by somebody who knows what they're doing. Let's see. Some Fox is setting it straight on that Dragon Snake. AZ Independent. Everyone was tickled at the reveal, ticked at the reveal recently, but they have been making DP cars since '09. They're built to go up against the Copo and Cobra Jacks, and it should have presented in a way that way instead of for the collector. Let's talk about the drag pack that I talked about in my last video. So let me just say this. If you haven't seen that video, it takes about 3.5 minutes to actually start gaining any steam. But once it gets rolling, it's me just giving just a rant and then answering some questions, and then another rant and then answering some questions. It's basically like just a rant off about that thing. And so I would say just check that video out for any real in-depth me partially losing my shit over that car. But yeah, not cool with that car. Not happy that they used that venue for that car, for that thing to be released, and it's nothing new. It wasn't even, anyway, major opportunity missed, and check out the video for that. Rich saying only B Mason can get a red-eye drive shaft. Um, Demonology said, I just finished testing and recommend the DSS carbon fiber drive shaft. Demonology approved. If it works and it doesn't frag on you, man, thumbs up. Hopefully it holds together. A lot of those things, if you look at the angle, there's a reason why these drive shafts are in two different pieces. You have what's known as a specific speed threshold for any length of pipe that is, spinning or reciprocating. Within harmonics and things like that, there's a lot of weird things that start to happen, even in a perfectly balanced unit. But if you look at the car, in fact, I took some pictures. The car, from your point of view, the drive shaft starts off and the transmission comes down and then kicks down and over and then down to the actual diff itself. So it's kind of like this, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of cars were getting vibrations. Is that there's too many axes that single piece is trying to deal with. It's why it came from the factory with two piece. It's why there's a few manufacturers that are actually looking at two piece drive shafts for these cars for the aftermarket, which would be great. But the issue is that a lot of guys will say, well, I don't really have vibration with car. Well, a lot of those guys aren't driving the cars on the highway, and a lot of those guys are stock 262 guys that aren't really cruising at anything more than about 75 miles an hour. You kick it up to about 80, 85 miles an hour, which down here in Texas, that's kind of the school speed limit. But anyway, that's when you'll start to feel the thing start to vibrate. So that's one of the reasons why. Let's see. We're saying, last I'll take his chat over to Body Demonology, but remember my name. I will see you at the track. I love it. Let's see. Riff saying, I haven't heard that dyno tunes are only good for wide open throttle, but street tunes are good for everyday driving. Oh, he's saying he has heard. Yeah, no, it's actually different than that. You just got to know the type of dyno and know the type of operator that's running it. Then that'll tell you all you need to know. There's just some things that you can do on a load-bearing dyno that you simply can't do to the car. You can literally make the car more or less put it under a load that it could physically not be under on the street. William's saying Mopar doesn't want other manufacturers to make parts for their vehicles because they want you to only buy from them. Well, that would make sense, but the problem is they don't make anything for the cars. So there's that to consider. Riff saying, let's see some thumbs up. I've heard bad things about the carbon fiber drive shaft. Riff saying, I mean, how much weight does it really save over the aluminum drive shaft? I don't think it's that much. Demonology saying, I wore out the middle bushing in my stock Demon drive shaft, too many passes. The middle bushing, that's something that a lot of folks were initially concerned with, but there's also been a lot of guys get a ton of passes out of those things just foot braking them. And I'm really not at the power level of a Demon, and I'm nowhere near the total run of a Demon either, or of your car either. So I think I've got a lot of time left in mine, and if it does let go, I'll just get another one because they're that buttery smooth and it's worth it to me. Let's see. But yeah, Demonology on his video, if y'all haven't seen it, his center bushing was shot on his, man. Good Lord. That's one of the very few, I haven't seen that many that have actually hurt the center bushing either, so. Could have been a one-off thing, or at least something that doesn't happen very often. TU saying, that video was incredible, B. You were spot on it. Hopefully someone at Mopar, FCA SRT, has a chance to watch it. You were speaking pure truth from us middle-class Mopar performance owners. Well, I appreciate that, man. I really do. And, you know, I tell you something, it comes from the heart. It's one of those issues that, you know, it can't only be the Hellcat and the Red Eye and the Demon owners that are getting love. I mean, again, it's the flag bearer. The original flag bearer for Mopar is always going to be the guy that's going up against the Mustang GT or the Camaro SS. That is true grassroots racing. That's the blue-collar guy or gal that's out there trying to do it on their own and have fun with it, and likes to do, likes the lifestyle, being at the drag strip, loves the competition. That's what makes the difference. That's the guy that's actually doing it. Yeah, you got guys that can afford and buy Hellcats. Hellcats are on the used market now, so they're a lot more affordable. But for those that are going to the track regularly, you're starting off with those NA guys, but they're not buying brand new Hellcats when they get rid of their NA car that they can't modify. They're getting used Hellcats, or they're moving away from the 392s because you can't modify them, and they're moving to Mustangs, or they're buying LS powered stuff because they can modify them and they want to be part of that, or they want to enjoy that part of the lifestyle, which is the modification process. That's why I will never stop saying that if you want a good deal on a used 392 powered Mopar contraption, look no further than your local Ford dealership. I say that all the time because it is true. And until Dodge figures out that the mods are one of the reasons why people buy their competition's cars, unless they figure out that that's important and that is a very important aspect to this lifestyle, they're never going to get it. And the more that they keep moving away from the folks that are trying to support them, the more that they're going to be, well, I guess you could say repeating history, where a lot of Mopar guys move away from Mopar because they can't do anything with those cars to stay competitive, all the while buying up the competition's platforms, modifying them, going far beyond where they were with the 392 cars, or with the 392 equivalent cars, I should say, from back in the day, and never looking back. And it'll be another 30 years before Mopar gets their act together with that. Here we go again. Sam's saying, I know all about driveline vibrations, man. It's enough to drive me nuts. Had to make the switch. William's saying aftermarket manufacturers might spend the resources to make the high-performance products better, but that money won't go to Dodge. That's absolutely right. Unless Dodge would license some of those products and sell them through their Mopar authorized dealerships for installation. They did that with Arrington for the scat packages for the 5.7. Don't forget about that. Chris is saying, very vague question, but what do you hope to see from the next gen Challenger and Charger? I'm hoping to see less. I'm hoping to see a little bit less weight. I'm hoping to see a little bit more, maybe a little bit fresher look, but I'm not really expecting anything. I've basically, I don't want to say I've lost interest, but I've kind of become bored with the idea that Mopar might do something in the future that's cool. Sure, okay, why not? The thing is look, the original Challenger had a run from 1970 until 1974. It had a 5-year run. The first 5 years of the newest Challenger from 2008 to 2012, including the 2008 model year, doesn't even get you out of the NAG 1 era. It doesn't even get you out of the non-VVT era. Then you go another couple of years, get into 2015, and now we've got 5 years of that. So we've got basically, 13 years of this car, which is going to end up stretching out to 15 years. Hell, by the time they introduce something that's actually worth talking about, how many different metamorphoses will the Mustang go through? If there's a Camaro left, what will it be like? What will it have? What competition will it pose for the then new or the soon to be new Challengers? Will it even be worth talking about? Those are the types of things that I'm concerned with. I'm not really worried about what Mopar is going to do. They've already proven that they're not going to really do much. I mean, I'd love to see, sure, 426. Everybody wants to talk about that. It doesn't matter. Won't make really much more power than 392. And that extra power won't do you a damn bit of good if the car still weighs as much as a freaking small battle wagon. So, what do you want me to say? I mean, I would love to see a lighter weight car. I would love to see something a little bit newer newer looking. I would like to see something that maybe appeals to a little bit younger audience and try to get them on board so they're not looking at their granddad's or their dad's car, something that only those guys can really relate to. That's kind of what I would like to see. The retro thing is cool, don't get me wrong, and I'm all right with retro cues, but I don't need to see retro forever. I mean, if I want to see retro, it's kind of hard to beat the original. So yeah, the retro style is neat, but I need to see something with a little bit more substance and something that's going to carry the brand farther into the future. I can't have something that is constantly looking behind, basically swimming like a crawfish. That's not how you get things done in this business. You got to keep looking towards the future, and the future is not really the direction that they're looking right now. So let's see. Blackbird's checking in. What up, Professor Mason? What's up, Blackbird? Sam Grable saying, I have twisted drive shafts. That sucks. Rips is saying, by the way, how can I help my reaction time at the track? I try to launch the car on the third yellow, but I always get a bad time, reaction time that is. You can try deep staging it a little bit. You might think you're reacting on the third yellow. You're probably reacting later than that. Slow your mind down a little bit. Don't be so antsy. And really, if you're going on the third yellow and you feel like your reaction time isn't good enough, go when you see the second yellow go off. Try that technique. Riff saying, should I launch on the second yellow? Yep, just like what I said. Puck Series, Chris G here. What up, bro? What up, man? Orange Crush is prepped and ready to go. Run some 1030 stock and full weight in this crazy D8 at HRP. Get some sun. Yeah, mine just sits in the garage ready to go. What with all the dead leaves and everything, I get to sweep out of here later. Sam's checking in. I've learned my lesson about drive shafts, truck pulls each quick axle wrap brake parts more than boosted launches. See. Oh, talking about truck pulls teach you quick. Yeah, no kidding, right? I can only imagine what those things go through. Riff saying 2008 to 2010, right? 2008 to, let's see, let me think about this. 2008 to 2008, 9, 10. When did the 392 come out? 11 or 12? I can't remember. Pug Series, funny as shit, Chris. Once you see the third yellow light, drill it and watch for the reaction time. It should be an 05 to 10. I do it all the time. Just ask B Mason. Orange Crush is saucy on the tree. Yeah, she is. I'm pretty saucy myself there, big boy. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to Riff saying then it went to the 392 for sure. Let's see, Christian saying, yeah, I hate to say it, but I'm thinking the current gen Mopar cars may be the best. Hopefully I'll be proved wrong in 2023. I just don't know. I mean, best is kind of I don't know. I wouldn't call them best. I think it's the best that we're going to get. I mean, 2023 is going to be a nice thing to look forward to, from a speculation standpoint, but we can bench race all night. I think the reality is that you're not going to see, man, I hate to say this, guys, man, I just don't think you're going to see anything much different. I really don't. My thought is that they're probably going to re-up with Mercedes-Benz on the LX platform. They've been talking about lightening it up. Prove me wrong. I'd love to, I'd be happy to be proven wrong in this situation. I just don't see a whole lot different. Look, man, guys, this platform, the tooling for these cars was bought and paid for a long time ago. Lots of profit margin in these things. So, yeah, don't look for any major changes away from that, especially with sales numbers where they are now. Let's see. Riff saying starting to get a little bit old. Floyd saying, in the used Hellcat market, are there any major differences between 2015 and 16 versus the newer 17 through 19? There are. 17 and up cars do not have mass air meters at all. The earlier ones do. 18 and up don't have PCV sensors, but aside from that, mechanically, no, there's no real difference. The later you look at in the Hellcat timeline, the better the drive shafts get. The 15s have been rumored to be a little bit on the weak side, where the 17 and up seems to be the strongest of the Hellcat drive shafts. But again, Aside from that, mechanically, they're all camshafts or any weird stuff like that. But of course, the 15s are the fastest. So that's just the way I do it. Yeah. Christian saying, Hellcat is still my first choice, though. Graduation's a few months away. I like it. Let's see. Dialysis forever. Saying there seems to be a lot of people lusting after these cars. Why change if they keep selling? On a 5.7, should I keep the 262 axle or would a 309 benefit? You want to go with a 309 with that car for sure. Make sure you get a 309 with the limited slip differential and verify that you have a 262 in the car before you order the 309. We're saying if somebody got a Challenger or a Charger, do you think if they were planning on boosting it, it would be best to get a 5.7? I've heard that the 5.7 takes boost a lot better. Man, look, here's the thing. Yeah, the 5.7 does take boost better. But why would you buy one of those cars with the intention of boosting it? You have to really love the look or the drive or what have you of an LX platform car to then go with a supercharger on top of what you've already got, because the gain just really isn't there. One of my favorite combinations is actually the E-Force supercharger on a 5.7 with an aftermarket tune. Same power that a 392 puts down, and maybe put 10 more horsepower down than what a healthy 392 would put down, with maybe a little bit better tip-in torque, but barely. It's basically identical to a 392. It's a low boost setup. I just buy the 392 car. That's kind of where I'm at with that. If you just are dying to have something with boost, save up a little bit longer and find you a used Hellcat. But the reality is that a boosted 5.7 is a lot of fun. You can make good power with it. 450 horsepower to the rear wheels, no problem. But just remember that you still got a transmission that you've got to start worrying about once you start hitting about 500 horsepower, or at least 530 pound-feet of torque on a Mustang dyno that's loaded. So just some things to consider before you start throwing a bunch of boost at a 5.7 or at a 392. You've got other parts on that car that are going to protest a little bit, not just the engine itself. Let's see. Riff saying, I would stay out of safety, just do the drive shaft. Good idea. Shawnee is saying, is my 16, I think he's saying MAF car, is speed density better? It still runs primarily off of speed density. It's just more monitoring with the let's see. Sean E is saying, best stock drive shaft, 60 foot, 155. Brian, how close to failure? Tomorrow, drive shaft install for launch is coming. Thanks again. Yep, don't forget, I need that measurement off of that drive shaft though, brother. How close is it to failure? I don't know, man. I mean, stock car, you're on a 309 gear, probably not taxing it that much, but I mean, you're better off with a drive shaft than you are without, no doubt about it. Just for safety's sake at that point, you're not wadding up a drive shaft. I haven't seen many stock cars wad drive shafts up, but in fact, I know a couple of cars that are running around on stock drive shafts right now. They're doing pretty darn good. So, that's it's. I think the modded cars have more of an issue with that. And, you've got the issues like wheel hop. You've got, stuff like that that'll tear a drive shaft up way before power will. So just keep that in the back of your mind as well. It's not just the power, not just launching the car. There are other things that are killing those drive shafts. Let's see. Chris is checking in. Orange Crust is pimping the stock drive shaft, and she was busting 151 and 152s. That is true. I did upgrade to a stock 2018 drive shaft from a buddy. Hold. I love it. When it comes to DA, what do you really want to make the best pass? It depends on the DA, because DA for me is not DA for you, and it's not DA for somebody in Amarillo or in Las Vegas or in anywhere else on the planet. DA for me, I like a DA somewhere around minus 1,000. That seems to be where everybody is the happiest in terms of track prep, in terms of tire, in terms of just the car making really good power as well. That's really where you're going to see the best combination of everything come together. Much lower than that for me down here in Houston means that it's really cold. It's like in the 30s. Or at least in the 40s, low 40s, to get those real deep negative 1,1800 foot DAs. But that's, if you can get the car to hook, that's even better. And that's, what we always try to go for. But the reality is going to be very difficult to get the car to actually do that. To make it easy, makes life easier to have that right at negative 1,000, maybe negative 1,200 foot DA. Let's see. Chris is asking, have you ever been into off-roading? What are your thoughts on the JL Wrangler and Gladiator? The JL is fine. I think that they're grossly underpowered. My wife's JK, I love that thing. And that thing, she's never gotten it stuck. And you should have seen some of the shit she's gotten that thing into. She's basically ceramic coated the whole underneath of that thing's exhaust system, with the red clay that she was running through. But anyway, getting back to it, no, they're fine. I just think that they're grossly underpowered, and that's a bit of a shame, because they could really use a little bit. I mean, just an extra, 40, 50 foot-pounds of torque and an extra, 25 or 30 horsepower would do that thing a world of good. But I like it. I like the off-road stuff. I'm not huge into it, but there was a point in time in my life where I was a little bit into it. Riff's asking or saying there's another 2015 Hellcat that goes to my track and has really bad wheel hop. That's not good. I'm guessing that since I have a differential brace that's helping me not have wheel hop, it could be, or you could have the right tire pressure. There's a lot of things that go into that. Shawnee's saying dip brace and lower control arms from BMR seem to help as well. Very true. I don't have BMRs on mine yet. I'm surprised I don't have those on mine yet. Riff saying all I have in my new car is a diff brace. Other than that, the one-piece drive shaft, but I don't seem to have any wheel hop. That's good. Keep it up. Keep whatever it is that you're doing going. Keep the air pressure where you're at or what have you. It's definitely a good thing to not have wheel hop, because that will tear everything up underneath that car. And if you ever get into wheel hop, get out of it immediately. Do not think that you're going to drive through wheel hop. You can only make it worse. Shawnee's saying, what was the temperature when you ran your 148 60 foot? I was like 45 degrees. Had a hell of a headwind though. We had like this Arctic headwind coming through. But that's when it went that 48. I think it was like 45 degrees. Racer X checking in. What's happening, my brother? What's up happening? Man, it's getting late. I'm checking in at about 2 hours into this one. What's up, brother? Riv saying, I still have really bad wheel hop in my 09 SRT8 with the Pro Charger. I can understand that. Might need to get some suspension parts on that one too. Well, guys, we are in now over 2 hours. It is time for me to check out. Got to wake up with the Amish in the AM. Hope everybody has themselves a fantastic weekend or week. I'm already looking forward to the weekend, if you can't already tell. Looking forward to getting some good times out of these cars this weekend. And then it is going to be shut down for the rest of the winter on my end. Going to get some road trips, going to get some miles underneath this thing, because that's the main reason why I bought it, was to drive it. And I do love driving this thing, not just at the drag strip. So y'all have a great one. Hope everybody has a great one again. That's a wrap. Adios.